Welcome to the conclusion of our two-part special episode, Practice Saver to Practice Builder, Telehealth in Eye Care, Finding Synergies. We're glad you've joined us to hear Drs. Habash, Dierker, Rhue, and Williamson conclude their conversation. This podcast was supported with advertising by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation. The opinions and views expressed during this program are those of the individual participants, and are not necessarily those of Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation or its affiliates. Now, let's get back to the panel.
So we realize that we can't do everything with a retina patient, flashes and floaters, but we can do things that are positive for our patients in our practice,
right?
Utilization of telemedicine. Let's, pivot to glaucoma. We hear, boy, how can you do glaucoma treatment or anything to have to do with glaucoma in a telemedicine setting? Ranya, what say you about that?
Yeah, so glaucoma has been the biggest hurdle that I've faced when trying to teach telemedicine. But there are a lot of, there are remote monitoring tools that are out there and can be used. Those are reimbursable as well. The eye care is a great device that you can send home with a patient. You actually get a fee for setting up the device for the patient, monitoring the patient, like 20 minutes, I think, per month, and for monitoring them continuously then. So it ends up being, I think, $100, maybe $135 or so as a recurring charge per patient per month. And that doesn't include the visits that the patient has with you. And so we have started to send the eye care out to some patients, especially our pediatric ophthalmologists are doing that quite a bit. So now it becomes like a revenue generating service. The patient feels really well taken care of. And we're getting that kind of glaucoma data that we were lacking in the telemedicine visit.
I'll jump in right there. I want to jump in and just say, certainly you could do the hybrid approach with the glaucoma patients, right? And talking about things that doctors who are listening to this think that you can't do with telemedicine. Ranya, when I saw you pop on your iPhone to the ocular, I was like, wow, because everybody always says, well, you can't do a slit lamp exam with telemedicine. Actually, you can, and you don't have to have this big fancy setup. You can just pop your iPhone on there, and you could be looking at, inside the eye. You could look at the lens. You could look at the nerve. You could look at the data. So yes, you can't, judge someone's pressure looking across a screen, but you can do many other things, especially in the hybrid model.
Yeah, so the patient comes in, has some testing, and maybe we have our counseling, and we can actually take our mask off and have a conversation with our patient about what is glaucoma and what are they in for, and why do they have to take their drops every day. And I had several visits, over the last couple of months where patients were having reactions to their drops, and we just determined that, boy, they're a preservative-free option, or maybe it's scheduling for SLT, or there's lots of different things that we can determine just by having a great conversation with our patient, and it doesn't necessarily require a slit lamp exam.
And I think to add to that, it also helps with compliance. So you are monitoring them a little bit closer. You have devices that they know that you're monitoring them, so they can't become non-compliant. The same thing goes for things like myopia management, scleral lenses, how that's going, and for macular degeneration. So we can have these self-monitoring things, making sure that they're taking their vitamins, making sure that they're taking their visits and coming back. And so I think we can help our patients in a compliance form as well that we all battle on a daily basis, especially with glaucoma patients and patients that are on drops for a long period of time.
Yep, that was, again, very well said. And then going back to the hybrid visit, which probably is a really good model for most glaucoma patients, it is so invaluable when I can see a patient and then determine that they may be a suspect for glaucoma, but they're dilated already. So I need them to come back for a visual field another time. They love it though, when they can come in, they don't need to wait for me. They can go to whichever location is closest to them on a Saturday. I don't need to be there, or after hours or whatever, and get their visual field test, get their IOP check and go home. And then I call them or do a video call later on to go over the results. And they love that. I mean, who would not love that kind of a situation? And then it doesn't.
Ranya, can you talk about your drive-through IOP clinic that you guys had?
Yeah. It's called an express visit. It's kind of like an express pass in Disney. So you just have this like, battery of tests, one after the other, then you get out. So it's, that's kind of the newer way of doing things for patients who do need to come in to have certain, tests. But other than that, we did do an IOP drive-through check, and we tried to make that sort of like picking up fast food. So they drove into the valet lot. One of our techs ran out, checked the pressure through the window, and then they would drive off, and we'd call them back later and tell them, yeah, we're going to need to put you on, a second drop, or yeah, that's actually controlling your pressure very well. So there are lots of really interesting things that we've come up with and that have actually persisted because they're just great ideas.
We did those as well, and we haven't been doing those the last couple of months. We use the eye care. If the pressure's good, they go home, we get a call later. If it's up, we bring them in, we do applanation, and we go from there. But the patients liked it because there's a lot of patients that just did not want anything to do with going into a clinic. And I think as we get into the late fall and winter, we're going to have these same challenges where people can't or won't want to come in for an in-person visit. So we're going to have to be flexible in our thinking for how we provide care. So I'm looking forward to the next set of challenges and opportunities with telemedicine as we face the pandemic in this wave that we're going through right now.
Well, I think that we've also touched on some things that are really valuable for us moving forward, not even just for pandemic times, but this is just better medicine. I mean, who wants a patient just for a pressure check to be taking up an appointment slot? I would much rather have a premium IOL patient in that slot instead, right? So now, you kind of get your cake and you get to eat it too. You have a patient who comes in, you still get to bill for that visit, but it's after hours or on the weekends and not taking up a slot in your appointment schedule, which is great for especially the young ophthalmologists or people starting to practice. Any other comments, guys?
No, I think it's been great. I've got some action items based on what people are doing in their clinics outside of Indiana. So I think that we've got some efficiencies that these are long lasting. We're making positive changes that are providing excellent care and making us more efficient. And then obviously the safety issue right now, but I'm really focused on the future and excited about how all of these things are going to shape the way we provide care, give patients more options. Patients want those options. But I agree with Brianna, we have to control this. We have to be the ones steering the ship here, because if not, we're going to get run over. And we've got an opportunity right now, this narrow window where things are changing so quick, is we've got the opportunity to lead. And if we keep this a patient-centric model, and I think it's just going to work out for everybody.
Yeah, I think every time I talk to you guys, I learn something. And for me, my takeaway is just going to be trying to get that triage doctor, the virtual triage doctor on call, get that started and implemented in my practice right away. So, when telemedicine started, it was out of necessity. It was a practice savior, when COVID first hit. And now it's really a practice builder, I think. So look forward to implementing it in more ways.
Excellent. Brianna, any final thoughts?
No, I'm excited. And I think just everything we touched on, again, I learned something new from all of these calls. And I think the collaboration between ophthalmology and optometry, it's exciting to see these come together and continue to thrive in this environment. And I know that will continue into the future. So I'm excited that we're all part of this conversation to keep pushing these conversations forward, because this is where it starts.
We have some questions which came in, and I think probably the first question I want to ask as a follow-up to what we just saw is, Blake, did you ever implement the acute care service that you were talking about?
Yeah, so what we've decided to do is have one of our ODs who really is leading the charge. Is leading the charge with our different ways to implement telemed. We kind of have him trying to figure out ways that we can do this. So he and I, since we've talked about this, he and I kind of sat down and kind of listed a couple different ways where our on-call doctors can implement this to perhaps not have to come in every single time a patient calls in, especially on the weekend. So the way we do it, we have 14 doctors that work with us, and we kind of rotate call. So that's going to be kind of his plan, is to try to get all of our doctors to use this first before what we typically used to do, which is try to diagnose something over the phone or drive in to go see what ended up being a subconjunctival hemorrhage anyway.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's how we're doing it actually at Bascom Palmer. We have our ODs manning the ship here, and that clinic is open, all day basically. And so when the patient calls in and they have an acute issue, it's not like a medication refill or something like that, then they get put in this queue, and the on-call OD does the visit. And if they end up having to bring the patient in, patient's not charged or anything like that. But most of the time, really about 70% of the time or so, they're able to handle these patients without having them come in. And it's been a great revenue stream and, of course, a patient pleaser for us. So I like the way you're setting it up. I think speaking of the OD-MD relationship, that's a perfect way to sort of marry that process.
And on that note, so if you're in a private practice with telemedicine, I think that it does still become a valuable thing to your clinic to offer your patients, at least on your website, have a banner where people know that they can get a hold of you if they need to, especially maybe possibly with more lockdowns coming, make sure that you have this in place. So yeah, sometimes it does make a little bit more business sense for you to not do it, but that's where it really is necessary to figure out how to bill and how to code for your time. So yeah, it still can be very lucrative.
Well, actually, I think it's more lucrative because now you're capturing a lot of those patients who just call in on the weekend and have an acute problem, and you still have to follow them up. It's just now you're actually getting 2 visits out of it, but it's not even about the revenue. It's more about, it's just exactly what you said. It's marketing for your patient population. They feel like you're there for them 24/7, especially with more lockdowns coming in. And if they get something like a subconjunctival hemorrhage or corneal abrasion, or even if they get flashes and floaters and they need to come in and see you, then you're going to go in on a Saturday and see them because you know that they have a legit problem. And I think that's where the real value is there. Great. I think we're all on the same page with that one. There's a question that came up about what do you think is the first step in terms of setting up your practice for telehealth? And maybe that's a good kind of segue from what we just talked about. So what is the infrastructure? How do you even get started? And I think probably the first thing you guys would do, and you let me know what you think, but everyone has to be working towards the same goal. So when your receptionist picks up that phone, they have to be prepared to offer the patient a telehealth visit. If it's after hours or at the end of the day or on a Friday afternoon or whatever, they need to be thinking all the time that the first line of defense is that telehealth visit, which is more of a triage visit. And then they always have to be thinking about that in the top, as a first line of defense a lot of times, and they have to know how to set it up and sell it because, in the very beginning, we did struggle with staff saying things like, well, sorry, you won't be seeing Dr. Habash today. It'll just be video. And, when the patient reads that in their statement, they feel like it's something inferior when really it's a tremendous improvement for them because now we're saving them a visit and actually being able to help them a lot more than they thought they could be helped. So would you all care to comment on that?
Yeah, I think my take on this is, there's running with telemedicine and there's walking with telemedicine. When you're first getting started, don't go after the whole world. Just go after some dry land. Just find you a piece of dry land and go after that. And what I'm getting at is just choose one type of visit, right? So maybe it's, as we were talking about in the webinar, maybe it's a couple of your post-ops, maybe not all your post-ops, but maybe just 3 or 4 of your straight cataract post-ops, day ones. Maybe just give it a shot and see what you think. Maybe go through your list for next week or the week after, and maybe try to pick out one of those chronic dry eye patients that perhaps you're treating for, maybe you just put them on Restasis and you have them coming back in 4 to 6 weeks and you're going to talk to them. Just kind of pick a handful of those patients, just 2, 3, 4 patients, right? And set yourself a little window of time and just try it, right? Because it's tough to tackle this. It seems like such a big thing. And I think that once you put your hands on it and touch it and feel it, you'll realize it's really not that foreign to you. And it's really pretty natural, actually. So once you do that, I think that it also is important to pick a platform, right? So you have to choose. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. You have to choose a platform. My personal opinion would be to choose a platform that doesn't require your patients to download an application and is something that they know how to already use, something that's text-based. And there's a few different ones. The ones we use is doxy.me. I have no financial interest in the company, but it's just an easy way to do it. It doesn't require them to download anything. It's all text message based. So choose something like that that's easy for your patients to do. Just choose a subset of patients and go after them and get started.
Great advice. Yeah, Doximity is the same way, and I cannot agree with you anymore. Like, you have to make it as simple as possible, and a web-based platform is really the way to go. Brianna, do you have any comments?
We just kind of all got thrown to the wolves in March, right? And so I think I had my first telemedicine, and I had set up a Doxy.me. Again, no financial interest there, but I think I had my first telemedicine thing set up in under a minute. So it does not have to be complicated to do it. And again, it just comes back to the billing part. So are you going to charge that patient cash pay before you sign into Doxy.me? Are you going to charge that patient their insurance information? So you got to get that before you go in. So there's some steps that you got to take just to make sure that everybody wins at the end of that visit. So again, it's nothing that we're going to give away for free. I can't say that enough, or else that's what people are going to start to come to expect from telemedicine, and that's not it. As doctors, you also got to figure out when you're going to put this in your schedule. So I actually went through this as a patient. The doctor had me on the link for an hour and 20 minutes before he decided to pop on. So we run behind, and we have to understand that as physicians to not make that wait, because you can't walk up to, a waiting room and see if somebody forgot you. So I was kind of like emailing back and forth. They kept telling me that he was coming, and I'm trying to go in between patients. So we have to be very conscious still and really make sure that you're running on time with these patients, or else they're going to get really frustrated. And it's that customer service experience that we all have to offer.
Yeah, that was really well said. I just took a few notes here because, again, I think if we talk about anything, we still need, this is probably the most important thing, because, people can hear us talk all day about, how great it is, but then until, they've actually implemented it, that's really the problematic part, potentially problematic. But I would agree. So if we looked at this as steps, step one, I would say review your schedule. And that's how we got started actually at Bascom Palmer. So when things shut down, we just, and I'm just using this as an example because we're still using it on a daily basis, even though we're not shut down. But this is how we actually got started, how we took the plunge. We all went through our schedules. We saw exactly what Blake was saying, those dry eye patients who just needed a follow-up, those, kind of pre-surgical cataract patients who were 20 happy and didn't need anything, and just needed check-ins. So those are the types of patients who were perfect for this. And we identified those and then set them up as telehealth visits. So that was step one. Step two, we trained the staff. And we actually wrote them scripts, because if they go off script, they are bound to screw it up because they're not really used to things, to selling things like you would. And so you have to make sure that it's a positive message, that you're selling it as a very important thing. And, you also have to inform them this is going to go through their insurance, right? Because we all do it 1,000 times a day for free. We're just used to doing that. And now this is a different mentality. And I've noticed that our patients have really caught on. They got used to it now, that every time they're going to pay a copay, and it's going to go through their insurance. So I think that mentality has shifted quite a bit. The third thing I would say, you need your staff to help you. When you saw Blake's video, what you noticed is he wasn't the one making those calls or sending those links or doing anything like that, right? It was all lined up for him perfectly, and he just got handed the iPad. And that's so important. That's one of the major lessons that we learned. You need your staff to get the patient connected. Verify, their appointment 15 minutes ahead, and make sure that their, pop-up blockers are not going on or whatever. And make sure that they're ready for you by the time you're ready. And the other thing that we've made sure of now is that our technicians are taking the chief complaint, history of present illness, and filling out that encounter already. So we come in, it's actually really fun. I mean, you come in, you do the doctor part, and then you get out. And it's awesome because it's not like a regular clinic now. Everything's sort of done for you. You're sitting in one place, and the patient just comes to you. And it's actually, once you get in the groove, it's a really efficient system that way. And then the last thing I would say is exactly what you said, Bree, which is do not mix your telehealth visits and your regular patient visits. That is like rule Number one, this is Telehealth 101. You have to have a special template. It's either an afternoon, a morning, a day, after surgery, whatever, you know, the case is. But those are your telehealth visits, and that's where your staff knows to put those patients. Because if you start mixing in between other patients, inevitably you're going to make a patient wait for an hour and a half, like you had, and that's a real downer for a patient. They're not going to, you know, they're not going to embrace telehealth after that. So those are kind of my 4 steps for getting ready.
Perfect. Case closed. That's all you need, people.
Oh, sorry, I rambled on there, but I think it really is an important subject.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Thank you for going through this. It is so helpful to hear. It felt intimidating to start. Wasn't sure where to feel a lot more confident now that I can apply what I've learned tonight as soon as tomorrow. Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. I'm not sure who wrote that, but it's really nice. I'm glad we could help you out. And you're welcome to reach out to any of us too if you have any questions along the way. So one of the other questions we had is, do you think that we will be headed back towards a heavy amount of telehealth with the spikes in COVID? I mean, I do, but I will tell you that we've run monthly checks on how many telehealth visits we're doing. We actually, we never went back down again as soon as things opened up. You know, it went from like basically 0 to 60 and then stayed around maybe 45 or so until October. And then we started to see an uptick in telehealth visits again. So it never went back down to 0 again. What did you guys notice with that?
Yeah, so for us, we're around 250 or so visits a month. So not a tremendous amount, but you know, that's post-op visits, that's LASIK counseling, stuff like that we're using it routinely for. And you know, for a while there, when it was the only thing we could do, we were doing some 100 visits a day between all of our doctors. All 14 of our doctors were putting in. So it was a tremendous amount because that was everything and our only lifeline to our patients. So, you know, if more spikes come and we are headed back for lockdown, you know, that's something that we'll have to just address when we get there. But I just have a feeling that the sort of lockdown when it comes to, clinics and healthcare systems, I don't know if it'll be the same as it was in March. You know, while I think there may be some stay-at-home orders and things like that, I don't know that our medical, state medical boards are going to be shutting down, procedures and clinics like they were last time, just because, well, that's a whole nother webinar. But so hopefully we won't have to shut our clinics down like we did in March. But I do think that, you know, telehealth is going to be back even higher levels because people got a taste of it back in March and April. And if they do start to go to some type of hybrid system, at least they got used to it back then and touched it back then. And I think they're going to be more willing to adopt it now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, now people are just used to it. And now when I talk to patients, they say, oh yeah, I've got another telehealth visit with my primary care doctor in 15 minutes. Like they get it now. It's just like a way of life for them. So we're actually in much better shape now to move forward and ramp up the visits even more than we have been. But I'll tell you, we're doing a really steady amount already. I mean, for my patients, it's maybe about 30% telehealth, and that's not just post-op visits. So it's still a lot just because it works and patients love it. And, you know, I find reasons to fill my in-person clinics with patients who are surgical or have more complex issues rather than, you know, those quick dry eye follow-ups or whatever. So for me, it's been a revenue generator and a patient pleaser and a provider pleaser for those reasons. Bree, did you have something to say?
Yeah, so one of the questions here, you know, how to get your patients to feel comfortable with telemedicine or telehealth is, you know, you can even do little things as people are coming into your clinic, letting them know that you are a telehealth provider, just something at your check-in on your front desk, having a little banner on your website goes a long way. We all have little email systems that you can send out to patients. So I would get ahead of this curve and let people know you do provide it. So I think you can do a little marketing behind there that will go a really long way. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. And then again, I think you got to start versing your staff because they're your lifeline. So our smaller clinics that aren't doing these 250 telemedicine visits, you know, I'm in a 3-doctor practice. So we're still kind of pivoting those ways. In those types of clinics, yes, it does have its place for myopia consults and how are your contact lens patients doing and your contact lens follow-ups. You can use that way. So in private practice settings, start there. Start on your contact lens follow-ups. Like, how many times do patients come back to their contact lens follow-ups without their contacts in? So right there, you're right in the same place. So you can kind of start there, and then those baby steps. So where you feel more comfortable with it, they feel more comfortable with it, and your staff feels more comfortable with it, and then you can go there.
Very good. Do we have time for one more audience question? Yeah, okay. Blake, you can choose one, go for it.
So did you guys touch on this? So one question's asking, does it make sense as an OD to do a lot of telehealth? I find I make more from my business by not doing as much. Bree, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it still can be very lucrative. So I've pivoted into like myopia management, doing more consults from home. So just like we were talking on the webinar, where you have one patient in the office, you say a bunch of information, they go home, then they undo everything that you did. So it's really having that family present together that you can save a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of follow-up questions. So it does make sense for also triaging, those patients we were talking about for, flashes and floaters. So can you save a patient a visit from coming into your clinic if you're just going to refer them to retina? Yeah, it's fun to see those things and figure it out. But if you know that you're going to, if it's not a migraine aura, or if it's not something else, or if you think it is a PVD, bring them in. And if you think it's something further, then, why are we going to waste that patient's time and waste a spot in your clinic when you could be doing something else as well? So I think we have to figure out ways to work together to provide really good patient care.
Yeah, I think that the way that question is worded, it almost seems as if the person asking it makes it sound like it's either one or the other. And I think our point is that it should be in addition to. And Bree, you just said, it's all about not taking the place of another visit. So, when you think about it, whenever I wasn't doing telemedicine and I had all 20 or 30 of those post-op day ones in my clinic, that was 20 or 30 slots that were totally eaten up of patients that were within their global period that I was making nothing on. So instead, I see all of them in less than 30 minutes in a very convenient, efficient way. And I start my clinic. And so now I'm seeing 30 more patients a day on my post-op day because I did that. So for the person asking that, I would just kind of say that it doesn't have to be one or the other. I would kind of figure out things that you can, anything that you could do over telemedicine, and then book those patient slots with other things that are revenue generating and practice building. So you'll build your practice doing this. It's not going to take away from your business.
And start there. Start with your contact lens follow-ups. A bunch of the time, especially, just start with your daily contact lens patients. You don't need to see those patients back. They're going to be successful, and then send them a link to order their contacts. So that can really go in that direction. And just like Blake said, now you have a whole nother slot that could have been used for somebody else, or you get to go home early that day because, use this for your benefit. It can benefit both parties 100%.
Yeah, that was great. I do think we should spend a little bit more time on this question, actually. I'm glad you picked this one because I don't want people to get the impression that it is one or the other. Just like you said, this is an adjunct. And probably a really good way to think about it is exactly what you guys said. Let's just identify some patients who are perfect for this, right? We've all been in clinic, tired as hell, like behind. And then we get to that patient who we put plugs in 6 weeks ago, and they're back, and you're looking at each other and you're like, are you feeling better? And they say, yep, doc, I'm good now. And you're like, okay, thanks. See ya. And they just waited like 2 hours to see you. And you're like, wow, that could have really been just a telehealth visit. It would have made a lot more sense for them, for me, for everybody, right? Those are perfect for telehealth. So let's just take some ideas right now. Blepharitis patients that you put on, Maxitrol or warm compresses, artificial tears, whatever, and you want to follow them up in a couple weeks. Perfect. Dry eye patients, same thing. Check on Restasis.
And on those visits, Ranya, when you're talking about that, right? Those patients may never have come back.
Right.
It's another visit that you get to bill, and you get to follow up, and you have a captive audience. So we, time and time again, will schedule a follow-up. Look how many times those get canceled.
Yeah.
So it is not a loss of revenue. It's actually an addition to your revenue. So it's just a little mind flip for sure. But
I'm glad you brought that up because they feel better. They think they don't need to. And what deters them the most is they don't want to come back. Definitely a Bascom Palmer, they don't want to come back and sit for 2 hours just to tell you they're doing fine. So, if you can give them that option of just being at their desk at work and just, getting on a quick video call with you, that's awesome. That's perfect for them. It's perfect for us, so it's a win-win. Those are really good patients to do it with. Let's see, other ones, when I'm doing like surgical counseling and I want them to go home and kind of, here's a good one for you, Bree. I send them out with like a monovision contact lens trial or something like that, right? And I want to get their feedback before we start planning surgery. Another really awesome one, just to do a counseling visit with in a couple of weeks to see how they did. So we're gaining that revenue, not wasting another office slot, and they're much more comfortable and they like that kind of visit much more. And then I also think this is a good time to talk about another visit that we're not capturing, but really should be capturing. So number one, when you see a patient, Bree, and you have, let's say you find an epiretinal membrane or something like that, would you love it if you could just reach out to the retina doctor and say, what do you think about this OCT? And then get his take on it right then and there on the spot for the patient?
Yeah, and that happens it's all happening right now. We just have never charged for it, right? Yep. So I think we're just all leaving so much on the table for both our patients and for our clinics. So, none of us have gotten a raise in how long from vision plans or insurance companies, and that's only going to get worse here again in 2021. So we're going to have to find ways that are better for us where we don't have to see a million patients to still make the same amount of money. And then take care of people better. So again, when you're driving an hour there, you're stuck in traffic to get to your dry eye follow-up. That's where we can really steer in a better direction. So.
Yeah, and I like this type of visit because patient is so impressed every time this happens that you got the retina guy on the phone or on the video really quickly. I mean, usually I'll just set up the video slit lamp and I'll get the retina guy to come in and weigh in. On the spot. So the patient has had now 2 visits in one session. You both bill for it because you're in different tax IDs. And it's a win-win-win for everyone. And I think that's a really good visit to do from an OD-MD perspective. Blake, what do you think about that?
Yeah, my mind goes to those patients whom, I like to send a retina to OK for cataract surgery. There's any number of patients who have mild ERMs or this little parafoveal cyst that's been chilling for like 3 years, but I send them to the retina doctor so that it imprints in their brain that they have a retina problem before I do their laser cataract surgery, even though I know the retina doctor is going to say, yeah, this is fine, go ahead, proceed. So if I could do something like that without them having to actually go to that extra visit, especially during COVID, I think that's something that could benefit, my patients and has still accomplished the same goal, which is to kind of cover me in the instance that, God forbid, their ERM worsens after surgery or something, and they don't think I caused it. So I think that's how I could kind of use that in my practice.
Yeah, that's perfect. And make sure that the retina guy knows that he can bill for that too. That's a consult code. So, that's a revenue maker for both of you because you're doing the work, you deserve it. I hate it when people think that we're just talking because we want to make money. It's not that. We just want to get paid for what we're doing. And I think that's a great way that we're offering a patient an on-the-spot consultation like that, which is so invaluable. I just don't think we give ourselves enough credit for the things that we do naturally. And also get reimbursed for it. So that's my take on that. Okay, I think we're pretty much out of time. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add?
All good. It's another excellent session. Definitely have some pearls that I am going to call my retina guy. I'm texting him right now.
Oh, nice. See, I mean, it's great because you're on this webinar because you are a leader in the field, but you're also still learning too, just like we all are. So yeah, it's really important that we all share our best practices with each other.
Yeah,
totally.
No, it's great. We always learn something new every day, and it helps us keep pushing forward. and really being the leaders of it for all of us so we can all come together.
Just like you said on that video, if we're not leading it, we're going to be fighting legislation in a couple of years.
That's the truth.
That was so well said, Bree. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to BMC and Novartis for making this possible. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this special episode. We'd also like to thank Doctors Habash, Dierker, Rhue, and Williamson for their participation. This podcast was supported with advertising by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation. The opinions and views expressed during this program were those of the individual participants and were not necessarily those of Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation or its affiliates.